Hi, this is Joe Herman, and this is my phone. It's an LG G6. It's basically LG's flagship phone. It's the best phone that they make, and I've actually had it for a few months actually by now, and I really love it actually. It works great, it's really fast, it's got a great screen, it's a super phone. I think that it's one of the best phones you can get. I got it at a good price, so I'm really happy with it. But one of the best things that I like about this phone is the camera, because it's got two lenses on the back. The camera has two lenses on the back of this phone. There's a regular lens, which is fine, you know, for taking pictures of friends and people and whatever else. And there's a wide angle lens. So for example, if you're getting a shot, you know, and you're like in front of like the Empire State Building or whatever, if you use the regular lens, you know, it's going to fill the whole shot and you're not really going to see the whole building. But if you switch it, then it goes much more wide angle and you could fit the entire building practically into the shot. I know that because I did take a picture of the Empire State Building, and that's exactly what happened. A few months ago, like when I first got the phone, I was at Madison Square Park, which is at the junction of 5th Avenue and Broadway and 23rd Street in Manhattan. So I was testing out the phone and I shot a nice little video of Madison Square Park with the wide angle lens. And so it really captured a lot of around there. And I walked through the park and I walked around 23rd Street, which is where the Flatiron building is. So without further ado, let's take a look at that video that I shot that day, and I hope that you enjoy it. So here we are standing in front of one of New York's most iconic landmarks, the Flatiron Building. It's called the Flatiron Building because it looks like a flat iron, and it was one of the first skyscrapers in New York. And it was very, very popular in its day. It still is. It's been depicted in a lot of photographs of New York as well as paintings of New York. And it stands right here at the base of Madison Square Park. By the way, you'll see that this area here, which used to be only open to traffic, New York City has actually made it sort of like a plaza where people can sit there and have their lunch. Remember, Broadway is a slanted avenue. It cuts slanted through the Isle of Manhattan, so it intersects, you know, in different places such as Herald Square and Times Square, and in this area right here at Madison Square Park. There you see 5th Avenue going uptown, and this is Broadway. So here we are entering in Madison Square Park, and we come across this statue of William Seward, who was actually Secretary of State. And it was thanks to him that we bought Alaska, if you recall, which was called Seward's Folly. It didn't turn out to be such a folly after all. Alaska's a great state and very important to the United States. So here we are entering Madison Square Park. If you look in the background, you can see that there's some buildings there, which we'll take a closer look at later. There are some important buildings such as the Metropolitan Life Insurance Tower, which is also an architectural landmark. If you can look there, they open up kind of like a little restaurant. It's very popular in New York. I don't know if it's in the rest of the country. It's called Shake Shack, and they have good milkshakes there and stuff. So, and then here's a bunch of people just enjoying their day out in Madison Square Park, having lunch. And this place isn't the healthiest of places, by the way. It's like, you know, burgers and shakes. I don't really think your doctor's going to be that happy on a diet of that, but there it is. Here we are walking to this fountain, which I've actually seen depicted in a John Sloan painting, but it's quite beautiful. It's evocative of an earlier time in New York. There's some nice flowers, and there's the fountain. So let's keep walking on this day. Here you got a view. Those buildings in front of us, by the way, used to be sort of like the toy center, where all the toy industry in New York was was located. So like Mattel and all these places had their offices in these buildings near the Flatiron building. So there's a woman walking her dog, which is a nice thing to do in the park. Just be sure that you pick up after your dog, because that is a law in New York City. This monumental flagstaff here, and I quote, honors those victorious forces of the United States Army and Navy who were officially received at this site following the armistice and the conclusion of World War I. So sort of a monumental memorial to veterans from the First World War is what that flagstaff is. Here's a dog run where people can bring their dogs in the park and they can run around and have a good time. And if you look, there's always, in this field over here, they've got some art exhibitions. There's been a lot of unique large sculptures put here. I suppose that this is some kind of thing about the city of New York. This one is called Prismatic Park, and there's some information about this artwork here. There was sort of this big head here at one point, which was really interesting. So there's always some public art going on in this field here. It changes often. There's another thing called Madison Square in New York, and those of you who've been to New York might have been to a concert there. It's called Madison Square Garden. And that's a whole nother story, because actually it was built where the original Pennsylvania Station was before, and that was sort of a crime, an architectural crime, because it was torn down to make way for the new Madison Square Garden, which is pretty ugly. Here's an artist doing a little painting of Madison Square Park, en plein air, as they say. In any case, the original Madison Square Garden was actually towards this corner of the park. And here we've got, looks like a photo shoot going on there, and somebody doing Tai Chi. And here's another artist doing some paintings. So Madison Square Garden, the original Madison Square Garden, was here right next to this park, and it used to have all sorts of events and stuff there. I believe it would have the circuses there, concerts. I'm not really even sure what they had there because it was so long ago. But it was in this area, and it had its name because it was next to Madison Square Park. And then it was torn down at a certain point. By the way, the original Madison Square Garden was designed by the architect Sanford White. And it was a grand sort of building, and he was actually shot there on the roof by the enraged lover of a woman that he seduced. By the way, here's a statue of David Glasgow Farragut, which is a general in the Union Army or something like that. Kind of a nice monument, actually. Really nicely done. Nice style there. I like the base. In any case, he was shot on the roof. Sanford White was shot on the roof. I believe it was depicted in some movies like Ragtime and things like that. And so there's a little bit of interesting New York trivia for you. Now here you can see that Metropolitan Life Tower, which is also a landmark in New York and one of the first great buildings in New York here to the east side of the park. And then if you look straight ahead in the corner of the park, that's where the original Madison Square Garden was. Here's another statue here, and this statue is actually of none other than Chester Alan Arthur, the 21st President of the United States. Here we are walking along the east side of the park when you get some really nice views of that Metropolitan Life Insurance Tower through the trees. Quite dramatic, actually. Like I said, I filmed this on the LG G6's wide-angle lens, which really fits in a lot and gives you a really dramatic look when you're doing these types of shots and these types of videos. Without that wide-angle lens, you'd really just see a lot less. So here you've got like somebody playing the piano as we exit the park. I think that the piano the New York State Department of Parks puts in these pianos for people to play, stop by and play. So if you play the piano, you can walk through the parks and tickle the ivories on a nice afternoon, such as this woman is here. And there you have it. So, little purple piano in Madison Square Park. And finally, we are leaving Madison Square Park. We're looking at this nice building, which is also a beautiful piece of architecture, actually, built as a life insurance company as well. And by the way, this is also where Madison Avenue gets its name, because right around here is the start of Madison Avenue. Madison Avenue starts on 23rd Street and then goes uptown. So the famous Madison Avenue, which really is one of the most beautiful avenues in New York City. I hope you enjoyed this visit to Madison Square Park in New York City, which I shot using the wide-angle lens on my LG G6 mobile phone. Thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe, and see you next time.